The alien judgment hall was not built for mercy. It was built to remind every visitor that resistance was useless. The walls were made from black metal taken from destroyed worlds, cold and smooth, marked with symbols that told stories of extinction. The ceiling rose so high it disappeared into darkness, making anyone beneath it feel small. Even hardened alien warriors felt pressure in this place, a weight that pushed down on the mind and chest. At the center of the hall stood the alien beast lord, ruler of many systems, executioner of civilizations, a being who had never known defeat. He was massive, his body covered in living armor grown through war and time. His eyes burned with slow confidence, the kind that came only after centuries of victory. He had crushed armies, silenced planets, and erased entire species from history. Today was no different. Another human world had fallen, and this hall was ready to witness the final proof that humanity was no different from the rest. Guards dragged a single prisoner forward. A human child. She was small, far too small for such a place. Her clothes were worn from travel and ash, but she walked without stumbling. When the guards released her, she did not collapse or beg. She sat down on the cold floor calmly, as if the metal beneath her was familiar. On her lap rested a gray cat. It looked thin and ordinary, its fur dull, its body relaxed. Its eyes were closed, and it slept deeply, unaware of where it was. The Beast Lord stared. For a moment, he said nothing. Then he laughed. The sound was loud, deep, and shaking, rolling across the hall like a storm. Alien warriors joined in, their laughter sharp and mocking. To them, this was a joke. This was humanity's final image, a child and a sleeping animal. No weapons. No resistance. No pride. The Beast Lord stepped forward, each step heavy and deliberate. The floor vibrated under his weight. He enjoyed this moment. He always did. The moment when hope finally understood it was alone. The child did not look away. She did not cry. Her small hand moved slowly across the cat's back, stroking it in a steady rhythm. The cat did not stir. The Beast Lord loomed over her, his shadow covering both the child and the cat. He expected fear to rise now. He expected her breathing to change, her body to shake. But her face remained calm, almost distant. Her eyes were tired, not broken. As if this was not the first ending she had seen. The laughter slowly faded as the silence stretched. Something about the quiet felt wrong. The child finally spoke. Her voice was soft, barely louder than a whisper, yet it carried clearly through the hall. She asked him not to wake the cat. The words were simple, almost polite, spoken without anger or threat. For a heartbeat, no one reacted. Then the Beast Lord laughed again, louder, harsher, forcing the sound to fill the space. He refused to let a child's words disturb him. He mocked the idea that a sleeping animal mattered. He crouched slightly and reached out with one clawed finger, touching the cat's head to prove his point. Nothing happened. The Beast Lord straightened, satisfied. Then the cat's tail moved. Just once. The movement was small, almost meaningless. But the lights above flickered. A low vibration passed through the floor, so faint it felt more like a pressure than a sound. The laughter died instantly. Warriors stiffened where they stood, unsure why their instincts were suddenly screaming. The cat's breathing changed. It remained slow, but deeper now. Heavier. Like something vast hiding behind a small body. The Beast Lord felt it too. His armor systems flashed warnings and then failed. Sensors went dark. A strange weight pressed against his chest, against his thoughts. He had felt fear in others countless times, but never in himself. This feeling was unfamiliar. Unwelcome. The child's hand continued its slow movement. Her body was tense now, careful, like someone standing beside a sleeping storm. She did not look at the Beast Lord. She watched the cat. The hall felt smaller. The massive pillars seemed closer. Even the air felt thick, hard to breathe. Alien warriors shifted uneasily, gripping their weapons tighter, though nothing had attacked. Something unseen had entered the room, and every instinct knew it did not belong to them. The Beast Lord tried to speak, but the confidence in his voice was gone. His thoughts felt heavy, slow, as if moving through deep water. He had mocked kings and gods before, but this was different. This was older. Quieter. More dangerous. The cat's ears twitched. Its eyes remained closed. Yet the pressure increased. Hairline cracks spread across the floor. Distant alarms echoed briefly and then went silent. Somewhere far above, ships in orbit lost power for a fraction of a second, long enough for their crews to feel dread without understanding why. The child held the cat closer. The hull, built to destroy hope, had fallen completely silent. The alien beastlord finally understood the mistake he had made. He had laughed at what looked weak. He had touched what should have been left alone. This was not a pet. This was not a symbol. This was something humanity kept close, something they trusted with their children, and it was waking up. The cat shifted slightly, adjusting its weight, as if preparing to open its eyes. The universe itself seemed to lean closer, waiting for what would come next. The silence inside the judgment hall did not break. It thickened. It pressed against every wall, every mind, every breath. Alien warriors stood frozen, unsure whether to move or kneel. Their weapons felt useless now, heavy and wrong in their hands. The great hall, once a symbol of absolute control, felt fragile, as if it were no longer in charge of what happened inside it. The cat shifted on the child's lap. It was a small movement, but it felt larger than any explosion. The pressure in the air deepened. The vibration under the floor grew stronger, spreading outward in slow waves. Somewhere far beyond the hall, deep within the fortress, systems failed one by one. Doors locked. Lights dimmed. Energy readings spiked and then vanished. The alien beastlord tried to command his body to move. It did not obey. His muscles tightened, but refused to act. His armor responded with error signals he had never seen before. His thoughts felt distant, as if something else was now closer to reality than his own mind. This was not an attack. This was not force. This was presence. The child did not look afraid. Her hand rested gently on the cat's back, fingers still moving in slow, careful strokes. Her breathing was steady, but her shoulders were tight. She knew what was happening. She had always known. The cat stretched. Its body lengthened slightly, bones shifting under fur that no longer looked dull. The gray color deepened, darkening into something richer, older. The fur rippled like it was moving against an unseen wind. The cat's breathing slowed again, deeper than before, as if it were pulling air from places far beyond the hall. The alien priests at the far edge of the room dropped to their knees. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their ancient memories screamed warnings. Symbols carved into the walls around them began to glow faintly, reacting to a force older than the empire itself. Stories long dismissed as myths clawed their way back into truth. The cat opened one eye. The world changed. Not with fire. Not with sound. With understanding. That single eye reflected light that did not come from the hall. Stars burned within it. Galaxies turned and died. Time itself seemed to hesitate, unsure how fast it was allowed to move. Several warriors screamed and fell unconscious, their minds unable to process what they were seeing. The Beast Lord gasped. Pain exploded inside his skull, not physical, but deeper. He felt small. Not weak, small. Like a shadow pretending to be solid. His victories, his empire, his endless wars suddenly felt thin, temporary, and meaningless. The cat looked at him. It did not see an enemy. It saw a mistake. The child finally spoke again, her voice low and steady. She did not sound proud. She did not sound angry. She sounded tired. She said that he should not have touched him. She said that he was old, and he did not like being disturbed. She said that humans were taught to be careful for a reason. The Beast Lord tried to speak. Tried to threaten. Tried to beg, only a broken sound escaped his throat. The cat stood, the hall cracked. The cat was no longer small. It did not grow violently, but reality adjusted around it, making space where there had been none. Its shadow stretched across the floor, reaching the walls, climbing the pillars. The glow from the ancient symbols flared brighter, responding like servants recognizing their master. The cat opened its second eye. Every alien in the hall felt it. Thoughts slowed. Fear became absolute. Not panic, clarity. They understood, in a single instant, that resistance was impossible. Not because the cat was stronger, but because strength was no longer the right word. This being was fundamental. The Beast Lord fell to one knee without deciding to. His armor creaked under invisible weight. His empire's control codes shattered in his mind. He felt ships across the system losing power, their crews crying out in confusion as gravity shifted and engines went silent. The cat did not roar. It did not strike that it simply looked. Images flooded the hall, projected into every mind. Ancient wars before memory. Beings like the cat, unbound and destructive. Universes collapsing under their unchecked movement. Then something new, humans. Fragile. Short-lived. Quiet, chosen, not as rulers. Not as warriors. As keepers. The child felt the weight of those memories too, but she did not fall. She had grown up with them, slowly, carefully, taught through stories and dreams. Humans were not given power. They were given responsibility. To calm. To anchor. To live beside what could not live alone. The Beast Lord understood now. He had not captured prey. He had threatened balance. The cat lowered its head slightly, bringing its massive presence closer to the child. Its form softened, pulling itself back, folding reality around it like a cloak. The pressure eased, but the fear did not leave. It stayed, carved into memory. The cat's voice entered their minds. It was not loud. It did not need to be. It carried the weight of certainty. It spoke of lines crossed. Of rules older than empires. Of consequences that did not require anger. The Beast Lord's empire was finished. Not destroyed. Disabled. Power grids collapsed across systems. Weapons shut down. Gates closed. Control vanished. His rule did not end in fire, but in silence. The most terrifying kind. The cat closed one eye. The child exhaled slowly, like someone setting down a heavy burden. She stroked the cat's fur again, grounding it, calming it. The being allowed itself to shrink, to sleep, because she asked it to. The hall was still standing. But nothing inside it would ever be the same. And across the stars, something ancient had noticed that a human child had once again done her job. The alien hall remained still long after the cat closed its eyes. Silence hung heavy, like fog that refused to lift. The Beast Lord knelt on the floor, his armor creaking, his chest heaving as though his lungs had forgotten how to work. The warriors around him shuffled uneasily, unsure if they should flee or stay, their weapons feeling suddenly meaningless. The air was thick, as if it still remembered the cat's presence, still vibrating with unseen energy. Even the walls seemed quieter, their ancient carvings dimmed after responding to a force far older than any living creature in the room. The child stayed calm. She had not moved from the floor, her small hands resting on the sleeping cat's back. Her fingers stroked slowly, deliberately, as if she were coaxing the creature back into rest after a long day of vigilance. She knew the rules. She had always known. Humans were not meant to rule the universe, they were meant to keep it safe. To calm the forces that others could not contain. To hold the sleeping power in quiet hands. The Beast Lord's gaze shifted repeatedly between the child and the cat. His eyes, once full of pride and dominance, now flickered with confusion, disbelief, and fear. He had conquered worlds, crushed armies, erased histories. Yet here he was, kneeling in a hall built for victory, powerless before a human child and her pet. He tried to stand, tried to issue commands, tried to remember who he was, but something deep and ancient held him in place. Not chains, not magic, not weapons. Presence. Pure presence, old as time itself. The cat stirred again, a small movement this time, a flick of its tail, a subtle arch of its back. But it was enough. Enough for the Beast Lord to feel the pressure return, deeper than before, sharper, more aware. He realized that the cat had not been asleep in the ordinary sense. It had been dormant, conserving its energy, waiting. Watching. Measuring. Judging. And humans, fragile as they seemed, had always known this. The child, in her silence, had understood her responsibility from the beginning. She had not feared the Beast Lord or his army. She had respected the power beside her. Whispers rippled among the alien priests at the edges of the hall. Ancient texts and forbidden stories had long warned of such creatures, guardians older than empires, beings that could destroy without touching, that could erase entire fleets without lifting a paw. The cat was one of these. The child's calm was not courage alone, it was understanding. Preparation. Humans were trained to handle what others feared. To hold it close. To guide it without forcing it. To keep it asleep until the universe needed balance. The Beast Lord's mind raced, seeking explanations, strategies, weaknesses. But none existed. Not in the conventional sense. He had always measured power in strength, in numbers, in fear. None of that mattered now. He could destroy the walls of this hall, obliterate the pillars, incinerate the floor, and the child and the cat would remain untouched. Not because of shields, not because of armor, but because force did not apply here. This was something beyond his comprehension, beyond conquest. And he knew it. The cat lifted its head slightly, revealing the faint glow of energy along the edges of its fur. It exhaled, a small, silent breath, yet the energy rippled outward, bending the light in the hall, causing shadows to flicker unnaturally. The child's voice broke the silence. It was soft, almost ceremonial, and carried an authority the Beast Lord could not deny. She instructed the cat to settle, to rest. Her words were not commands, they were trust. She knew the cat would listen not because of obedience, but because of the bond humans had always shared with these ancient guardians. Trust was the bridge between the fragile and the infinite, and the child had it in full measure. The hall responded to her presence. Symbols on the walls shimmered faintly, lights shifting as though acknowledging a higher order. Alien warriors fell to their knees without realizing why, their pride shattered, their minds unable to process what they were witnessing. The Beast Lord raised his head slowly, trying to regain control, but the air itself seemed to resist him. He realized that this was more than a lesson in humility. It was a demonstration of purpose. Humans were not predators. They were stewards. They held the universe together in small, quiet ways that no empire had ever respected. And then the child rose to her feet, careful not to disturb the cat, which remained on the floor, curled yet vigilant. She looked at the Beast Lord, and for the first time, the great alien felt the weight of her presence. There was no anger, no hatred, no malice in her expression, only quiet certainty. It was a power he could not fight. It was authority without violence. It was humanity at its most dangerous, small, underestimated, and fully aware of the forces it had been entrusted with. The Beast Lord's knees gave out as he realized the truth. He had thought himself invincible because he had never faced a force that did not react to fear, strength, or aggression. But humans did not act like other species. They did not chase power for themselves. They contained it. They protected it. They waited. And in this waiting, they held the universe together. For eons, humans had been underestimated. For eons, they had seemed weak. And for eons, beings like the Beast Lord had believed their laughter was final. The cat stretched once more, longer this time, its form seeming to expand and contract in a way that bent perception, but without actually moving. Its glow became slightly more noticeable, a subtle halo along its fur, and the Beast Lord could feel it reaching into his mind, not to harm, but to test. To measure. To remind him why he had never faced humans before. And he realized that this small, gray creature, sleeping in a child's lap, carried with it the weight of ages, the judgment of worlds, and the authority of the universe itself. The child whispered again, almost inaudible, but enough for every mind in the hall to feel it. She told the cat it could rest. She told the aliens they could live, for now. The Beast Lord's empire might survive physically, but its spirit, its pride, its sense of control had already been broken. And as the cat settled, the hall seemed to breathe, the walls contracting and expanding as though the very building recognized the child's mastery. Humans were small. Humans were fragile. Yet in that fragility was responsibility. In that quiet calm was authority. In that silence lay power. The Beast Lord bowed his head slightly, not in obedience, but in recognition. He had underestimated humans, as all had. And for the first time, he knew what it meant to be truly powerless. The child lifted the cat, cradling it against her chest. She stepped toward the door, moving as if the hall itself followed her lead. The alien warriors did not rise. The Beast Lord did not move. The silence remained, heavier now, and every being present understood that the true lesson had been delivered. Humans were not rulers. They were keepers. And in keeping, they were stronger than any empire, older than any conquest, and more dangerous than any weapon. The hall remained still. The cat's eyes were closed again, but the memory of their power lingered, leaving the Beast Lord and his empire forever changed. Across the stars, even those who had never seen the child or the cat would feel it. The universe had shifted. A quiet force had reminded all who would listen that humans were not to be mocked, underestimated, or broken. And as the child walked away, the Beast Lord realized the most terrifying truth: humans did not need to fight to win. They only needed to endure, to understand, and to protect. And that, he knew, was enough to defeat anything. The child walked slowly down the hall, the cat resting lightly in her arms, yet every step seemed to bend the air around her. The alien Beast Lord remained kneeling where he had fallen, his massive claws digging into the metal floor as he tried to process what had just occurred. His empire, his fleets, his armies, all had faltered without a strike. He had thought power came from size, from fear, from destruction. He had been wrong. Humans were not weak. They were guardians, stewards of forces far older than any empire. And the child in front of him was living proof. The hall felt different now. Shadows clung to corners but did not move. Lights glimmered faintly along the pillars, responding to the child's presence, acknowledging that something old and unseen had been recognized. The alien priests who had whispered among themselves before now bowed fully, their eyes wide with the kind of awe that comes only from witnessing truth. What the child carried was not just a cat. It was a being of ancient cosmic power, one that humans had long learned to live beside. One that they had learned to protect, to calm, to respect. The child stepped closer to the center of the hall and placed the cat gently on the floor. It curled itself, small again, resting as if nothing had happened, but the air around it remained charged. The Beast Lord tried to rise, to assert himself, to regain control, but his body would not obey. The energy of the hall, the presence of the cat, and the quiet authority of the child combined to hold him in place. This was not force. This was understanding. This was balance. Humans had never needed to fight in the way others did. Their strength was subtle, patient, enduring, and far older than any army. The child spoke, not loudly, but clearly enough that every mind in the hall understood. She spoke of the role humans had been given, not rulers, not conquerors, not tyrants. They were keepers. They held dangerous powers in trust, guardians of beings and forces that could unravel the universe if left unchecked. Wars had come and gone, empires had risen and fallen, yet humans endured. They endured because they had purpose. They endured because they understood their responsibility. And now, in front of the Beast Lord, that responsibility had been demonstrated. The Beast Lord's mind raced, trying to grasp the reality of what he had seen. He had conquered countless species, destroyed entire planets, ruled with fear and strength. And yet, he could not touch this child, this cat, this truth. All his victories felt small, all his weapons useless. For the first time in centuries, he realized that power was not always what it seemed. To humans, strength was measured differently. It was patience. It was foresight. It was restraint. The cat stirred slightly, opening one eye, then closing it again. Even this minor movement caused a ripple of awareness among the alien warriors. They could not see the cat's power fully, yet they could feel it pressing against their instincts, bending the rules of the hall, of reality itself. The child knelt and whispered to the cat, soothing it, grounding it, reminding it that she was in control, not through force, but through trust. This was the bond humans had always shared with the beings they kept: respect, understanding, and unwavering care. The Beast Lord finally spoke, his voice low, shaking, betraying the fear he had never admitted. Why? Why do you have such things? How can your species, how can you? His words broke into gasps as he struggled to comprehend. The child did not answer verbally. She did not need to. Her presence alone, calm and unwavering, carried the explanation. Humans had survived countless threats not because they were powerful in the conventional sense, but because they had learned the one lesson no empire could: how to live alongside power without abusing it. A hum began to grow in the hall. It was subtle at first, a vibration beneath the floor, as if the metal itself were awakening. The symbols on the walls brightened, glowing softly, acknowledging the order the child represented. The cat shifted slightly, its body radiating calm authority, energy that could destroy worlds if unleashed, yet restrained entirely. The Beast Lord realized that humans did not seek to dominate such forces. They sought only to protect them, to prevent them from falling into the hands of those who would use them carelessly. Every warrior, every priest, every being in the hall felt the same realization. Humans were not weak. They were vigilant. They were patient. They were the unseen balance of the universe. And they could be terrifying without ever raising a weapon. The Beast Lord bowed his head fully, a gesture not of submission but of understanding. He had faced humans countless times and never truly known them. Today, he had seen only a fraction of their purpose, and it was enough to shatter his pride. The child rose once more, lifting the cat into her arms. She began to walk toward the exit, each step deliberate, slow, confident. The air seemed to follow her, responding to the order she carried naturally, without speech. The alien warriors did not rise. The Beast Lord did not move. The silence remained heavy, filled with unspoken acknowledgement. Humans had endured. They had survived. And they had done so by holding the most dangerous things the universe contained in quiet, steady hands. The hall, once a symbol of conquest, now felt hollow. It had seen countless victories, countless deaths, countless empires bow, but none like this. The child and the cat had demonstrated a power beyond fear, beyond strength, beyond aggression. It was a quiet power, a disciplined power, a human power. Across the universe, this example would spread not through war, but through memory, through myth, through acknowledgement. Humans were small, fragile, underestimated, but infinitely dangerous to those who misjudged them. The Beast Lord finally managed to rise partially, his posture crooked and broken. He looked at the child and her companion with a mixture of awe, fear, and a realization that he would carry forever. He had conquered worlds, yet he had learned a lesson from a human child. One small, quiet, patient human child, and a cat that could have destroyed everything in an instant. He understood that humans had endured for so long not because of strength, but because they had learned to hold and protect what the universe could not. The child stepped outside the hall, the cat curled safely in her arms. The doors closed behind her, heavy and solid, yet they felt lighter than ever before. The Beast Lord remained inside, kneeling, understanding fully for the first time that the universe was not ruled by fear or strength. It was watched, kept, and guarded by humans who seemed fragile but carried responsibilities older than empires. And that knowledge, he realized with dread, would shape everything to come. Humans were not rulers. They were guardians. They endured silently, patiently, carrying power that could unmake galaxies. They did not seek glory. They did not seek conquest. They simply survived. And survival, in their hands, was more dangerous than any weapon. The hall was still. The cat slept. The Beast Lord bowed. And somewhere across the stars, the first whispers of true fear began to spread, not of humans fighting, but of humans watching. The fortress trembled. It was subtle at first, a vibration through the metal floors that no one could ignore. Then it grew, a low, thrumming hum that echoed in the pillars, in the walls, in the air itself. The alien Beast Lord staggered as if invisible hands pressed against his chest. His armor creaked and groaned. Alarms across the fortress blared, but their warning felt meaningless. Systems failed one after another. Doors locked. Lights flickered. Control codes shattered. Ships in orbit lost power. His empire, massive and unchallenged for centuries, began to collapse silently, impossibly, under forces he could not see. The child walked down the steps of the hall, the cat in her arms. Its fur was gray again, calm and unassuming, but the hall still trembled with its presence. The Beast Lord wanted to shout, to command, to fight, but his voice caught in his throat. His mind, honed over eons to conquer and control, was suddenly too slow, too small to process the reality in front of him. Humans were not like other species. They were not predictable. They were not fragile. They were patient, careful, and infinitely aware. The cat stirred slightly, its tail brushing the floor, and the walls themselves seemed to bend subtly toward it. Ancient symbols carved into the pillars glowed brighter than ever, responding not to power or threat, but to presence, to responsibility, to the judgment of a being that humans had trained to respect. The Beast Lord's mind recoiled. He had fought kings, gods, and conquerors, yet he understood now that strength alone could never match purpose. He had faced humans many times, yet he had never known the truth. And the truth was terrifying. The child placed the cat on the floor, and for a moment, the creature remained still, curling its body gently. But the hall did not remain still. Waves of energy, subtle but undeniable, spread outward, cracking the metal floor in thin hairline lines. Lights above flickered, then dimmed entirely, as though the fortress itself acknowledged that it no longer held control. Alien warriors fell to their knees, clutching their heads, their instincts screaming danger that their minds could not name. Fear unlike anything they had ever known gripped them, quiet and absolute. The Beast Lord tried to roar. He tried to assert his dominance. But the sound was hollow. His voice, trained to command armies and planets, had no weight here. He felt smaller than ever. His victories, his empires, his centuries of fear, all meaningless in this presence. And then he realized the hardest truth: the humans had never needed to fight to hold power. They endured. They understood. They held forces that could destroy empires, and they did so without ever raising a weapon. The cat opened one eye. Time seemed to hesitate. Shadows shifted unnaturally across the pillars. The floor vibrated again, stronger now, as if reality itself had taken notice. Alien warriors screamed as their weapons failed mid-strike. Their ships spun out of control in orbit. The fortress, their pride, their safety, faltered without the touch of human hands. The child whispered softly, and her words carried beyond the walls of the hall. They were calm, deliberate, carrying authority that needed no volume. The cat responded immediately, settling fully, but the energy did not vanish. It remained, restrained only by trust and the bond between human and guardian. The Beast Lord realized, with growing horror, that he had not faced mere animals or weak humans. He had faced beings who could unmake his entire empire silently, and a species trained to hold them with patience and care. The floor cracked further. Pillars groaned. Metal panels fell loose, clanging against the walls with uncontrolled rhythm. The Beast Lord tried to rally his warriors, to shout orders, to assert the dominance he had wielded for centuries. But his commands were meaningless. Systems shut down instantly. Weapons discharged incorrectly or refused to fire. Gravity shifted subtly, enough to unsettle the massive creatures who had never stumbled. Chaos was spreading, not from violence, but from presence. The child lifted the cat again and began to walk slowly toward the exit. The hall seemed to open around her, bending to her movement without effort. Every warrior, every priest, every being present understood that resistance was futile. The humans did not need to strike. They did not need to wield force. Their strength was quiet, unseen, patient, and absolute. It was terrifying because it existed outside of aggression. It existed outside of empire. It existed as a fundamental balance that the Beast Lord had ignored his entire life. Ships in orbit lost power entirely. A massive transport carrying elite warriors tumbled helplessly, the crew screaming as emergency systems failed. Alarms blared across outposts in the system, then faded into silence as the power grids collapsed completely. Communications went dark. The Empire's reach, once endless and omnipotent, had fractured in minutes. Not by attack, not by rebellion, but by the calm and steady authority of a child holding a cat. The Beast Lord fell fully to his knees. His pride shattered. He realized, in that moment, that he had underestimated humans for centuries. He had believed in strength, in terror, in dominance. He had laughed at a child, at a small animal. He had mocked what he thought weak. And yet, here he was, kneeling in a collapsing fortress, powerless before the quiet patience and understanding of a human child. The cat stirred one last time, curling tightly against the child's chest. The pressure in the hall eased slightly, but only because the child allowed it. She had the choice to unleash it fully, to end entire fleets and empires in a moment, but she did not. Humans did not seek destruction. They sought balance. They endured. They protected. They survived. And in doing so, they were more powerful than anything the Beast Lord had ever faced. The child walked past the Beast Lord and out of the hall. The cat, calm and seemingly ordinary again, rested easily in her arms. The fortress trembled one last time, and then silence fell. The Empire had not been destroyed entirely, but it had been broken. Its spirit, its authority, and its dominance had been shattered. Across the stars, whispers began to spread, not of humans fighting, but of humans watching. The Beast Lord lifted his head slowly, fear still in his eyes. He understood now that survival, patience, and responsibility were greater weapons than fleets, armies, and planets. Humans were not rulers. They were guardians. They endured. They held the universe together without arrogance, without greed, without fire. And that knowledge, he realized with dread, would echo across the stars for eons to come. He bowed his head fully, not in obedience, but in recognition. The child and her cat had demonstrated the ultimate lesson: the universe was not dominated by those who conquered. It was held by those who understood responsibility, patience, and the quiet power that comes from enduring. Humans were not the strongest. They were far more dangerous than that. They were eternal. The fortress remained still, but it no longer felt like it belonged to anyone. The halls, once alive with the clamor of power and fear, were empty of certainty. The alien beast lord remained on his knees, his pride shattered, his mind racing, trying to make sense of what he had witnessed. He had ruled empires, toppled planets, commanded fleets that could annihilate worlds, yet none of that mattered here. Not against humans, not against patience, not against the quiet guardianship they had nurtured for eons. The child walked through the hall, carrying the cat in her arms. Each step was deliberate, calm, as if she were part of the air itself. Her presence alone shifted the balance of power in the room. The alien warriors, priests, and generals who remained conscious dared not rise, dared not breathe too loudly, for even the slightest movement could draw the attention of the forces she carried. They had glimpsed the truth now: strength was not measured by weapons, fleets, or size. It was measured by restraint, understanding, and endurance. The cat stirred lightly, curling against her chest. Its gray fur gleamed faintly in the dim light, but it was no longer the threatening presence of the earlier moments. The energy it radiated remained, subtle but undeniable, like a heartbeat beneath the skin of the universe itself. This was the force humans had always carried quietly, unseen, but never ignored. They endured in the shadows, holding the balance of life and destruction without ever seeking glory. This was their power. This was their purpose. The Beast Lord struggled to rise, but he felt the weight of the hall, the weight of the cat, and the presence of the child pressing against him. His claws scratched against the floor, but he could not summon his strength. The human child before him held what empires could never contain: authority born from restraint, vigilance, and understanding. The silence of her steps carried the weight of centuries. The cat's presence amplified it. Together, they were untouchable, not through violence, but through a mastery that he had never known existed. He tried to speak, to negotiate, to bargain. His voice cracked. Words that had once inspired fear now fell hollow. You are only a child," he whispered. The words died before they left his mouth. He realized too late that the age of empires, the age of dominance through destruction, was irrelevant here. Humans did not need armies to enforce control. They did not need fleets to crush opposition. They only needed patience, understanding, and the courage to hold what was dangerous in quiet hands. The child knelt and placed the cat on the floor, letting it settle. Even as it rested, the hall seemed alive with subtle energy. The walls, the pillars, the very metal beneath them hummed with acknowledgement. The alien warriors felt it, the Beast Lord felt it, even the distant systems connected to the fortress felt the shift. Humanity's guardianship extended farther than they had imagined. They endured, and in enduring, they protected the balance of everything. The Beast Lord finally rose, slowly, trembling. He understood now. Not because someone had told him, but because he had felt it. Every weapon, every fleet, every conquered world had been powerless against restraint. The humans had held the forces of the universe and survived, and they would continue to do so, silently and eternally. This realization burned in him, heavier than any fire he had unleashed. It was terrifying. The child picked up the cat once more and moved toward the doors of the hall. The air followed her movement, bending around her like water. The Beast Lord stepped back, defeated not by strength, but by awareness. He understood, finally, that humans were not rulers, not conquerors. They were keepers, guardians, holders of balance. And this knowledge made them more dangerous than any army or weapon he had ever faced. As she passed the last of the alien warriors, the child paused. She did not look back at the Beast Lord. She did not speak. She only let the quiet authority of humanity ripple through the hall. The cat's fur shimmered faintly in the light, a silent reminder that even the smallest beings could carry unimaginable power when guided with understanding and care. The fortress seemed to sigh, as if releasing centuries of false confidence. Systems stabilized but remained subdued under the knowledge that force alone would never dominate the guardians who endured quietly in the shadows. Ships slowly regained power in orbit, but their crews felt an unease they could not explain. The universe itself seemed to have remembered something vital. Humans survived because they carried responsibility, and in that responsibility lay strength no empire could overcome. The child and the cat exited into the cold night beyond the fortress. Stars sparkled overhead, distant and constant, as though watching, waiting. The Beast Lord remained inside, kneeling on the floor, and the memory of this encounter would follow him for centuries. He had faced gods and conquerors. He had faced entire fleets. And yet he had never faced humans, and now he never would underestimate them again. The hall fell silent once more, but the silence was different. It was no longer oppressive. It was respectful. It carried the weight of understanding. Humans had endured. Humans had survived. Humans had mastered restraint, patience, and responsibility. They did not need to fight to win, and that was their greatest weapon. Across the stars, distant worlds felt it too. Beings who had watched humanity, dismissed it, mocked it, they would now reconsider. Whispers would travel between empires, rumors of children who carried ancient power, guardians in quiet laps, humans who survived because they understood forces far older than empires themselves. Fear would spread, not of war, but of patience, endurance, and vigilance. The child and the cat walked slowly into the distance. They were small, fragile, seemingly ordinary. But their presence carried the weight of universes. They were human, and they endured. That alone was enough to keep the balance. That alone was enough to protect worlds. That alone was enough to terrify even the greatest of conquerors. The Beast Lord bowed his head fully. Not in submission, but in recognition. He had learned the ultimate lesson: humans were not to be underestimated. Their strength was quiet, patient, enduring, and eternal. They held power without wielding it. They endured without complaint. They survived where empires failed. And that knowledge, more than fleets, more than armies, more than destruction, made them unstoppable. The child looked to the stars, the cat resting peacefully in her arms. Humanity had endured another test, faced another threat, and survived without lifting a weapon. She smiled faintly, knowing the universe was safer because she and her kind had done what they had always done, guarded, endured, and preserved the balance that others had long forgotten. Humans were not rulers. They were guardians. And that, in the quiet and patient way they carried their strength, was more dangerous than any empire could ever imagine.